Good evening, welcome to Worldview. We are live on GBC 24. Worldview is a program where we tell the story of Africa. My name is George Asikri. This evening we are here to talk Africa, we are here to talk the globe. And when you look at the global community, you get two feelings. If you are a liberal, you see a future full of prospect, peaceful future. If you are a realist, you might be seeing an anarchic future. But in all these, the youth have a role to play. Tonight, we're coming to look at the role of international peace. What can you and I do to ensure that? This is coming from a backdrop of an international peace summit that has taken place in Malaysia. In the studio this evening, I have Bishop Ishmael Abuaji Eji. He is the General Superintendent of the Victorious Life Chapel International. Is headquartered here in Accra, specifically at Bawe. Next to Bishop is Soraya Idrisu Kwabia. She is the country director, Youth Chambers International. And next to Soraya is Iribad Ibrahim. He is the chief executive officer, Iribad Security Consult. And when it comes to peace, he's been he's been involved in these activities. He's been peace ambassador in all the elections, at least that he has been actively involved here in Ghana. I am George Asikri. Thanks for your time. I'll start right away with you, Iribad. When you look at the global community, the future, do you see an anarchic one or a peaceful one?
Okay, thank you, and good evening to my colleagues on the panel and the millions of people that are watching around the world. I think, George, you gave quite a profound preamble by mentioning realism, and everybody who has been a student of international relations and international security knows that Hans Morgenthau gave the 6 principles of realism. So therefore, I agree with you entirely that even though the utopian situation should be that there should be as less anarchy as possible in the world, and the globe has been battered by so much tumultuous activities by countries that have used their bully pulpit because they think might is always right, when in fact might is not always right. So therefore, as the world gathers in Malaysia to do an introspection of how far we've come in terms of peace at various levels, at the national level, the regional level, the continental level, and all the international level, I think it behoves on us to do a very sincere assessment and evaluation of how far we've come. Again, if you take what has happened in the past century or so, the level of devastation that the world saw between 1914 and 1918, when the First World War broke out, as a world we took some stringent measures to be able to forestall a recurrence of that carnage by cobbling together a few countries that formed the League of Nations. But the League of Nations, with all the charter it worked with, could not prevent yet again another Second World War or another World War, which happened between 1939 and 1945. And even after the establishment of the UNO, the United Nations Organization, we've seen the Vietnam War, the Korean War, the genocide in Rwanda, and currently the persecution of an ethnic minority called the Rohingyas in Myanmar. So therefore, I don't know what world leaders would be looking up to do an assessment of how far the globe has come in terms of peace-building efforts we are all making. I would score us quite poorly because of historical wrongs that have been, quote-unquote, been righted by world organizations like Amnesty International, the Human Rights Watch, and the UN General Assembly, as well the makeup of the UN Security Council. Why should a continent like Africa, with 54 member states, not have a permanent representation on the UN Security Council?
Well, somebody will argue that that's an attempt by the superpowers to maintain the hegemony of the superpowers that be.
Exactly. So the vestiges of neo-colonialism and imperialism, as Dr. Nkrumah puts it, continue to be with us. So therefore, we should push harder so that Asia is a bit lucky. China is a strong representative. But for Africa, Europe is very, very small. But for Africa to have no permanent representation. And the ICC, in The Hague, the International Criminal Court, is cherry-picking which former leaders, world leaders, to prosecute. So therefore, when you put two and two together, you realize that because of an unjust international system, getting peace has become quite a wild goose chase. And as world leaders meet in Malaysia, young people like Soraya and I, even though I think the Reverend may be youthful at heart, but he still belongs to the older generation. We should, begin to have this international debate as to how we can correct the deficiencies of the international system to ensure global peace.
Soraya, Junior Chambers International. Well, before actively getting involved in activities for peace, how did you see the world as a young lady growing up?
Wow, this is $1 million one for me. I see a world that behoves on us all. I see a world we can make or unmake. Always, before I joined Junior Chamber International, or even as an individual, I see a world where we have the future lying before us and we have it right before our arms, where it takes the individual to create the change you want to see. So if you want to see gold, you walk the path of gold. If you want to see peace, you seek peace. At Junior Chamber International, we believe that peace is not the absence of war, but the prevalence of justice. We also believe that the brotherhood of man transcends the sovereignty of nations. If there is an adage that goes that if you see your brother's beard burning or on fire, it's an advantage for you to fetch water and get yours into it, because the next person could just be you. So I have always seen the world where we can create whatever it is we want to enjoy.
There's one thing, having the good mindset with the world giving you the opportunity to do what you can. Another thing, having the conducive environment to do that. The world you see growing up, is it a world that is actually giving the youth that opportunity to chart a peaceful course?
Sometimes, yes, but at the end of the day, it behoves on the individual. It is you that creates the environment you want to see. The grass is not always on the other side. If you think it is greener on the other side, get water and trust me, you would have greener pastures also. So,
Bishop.
Yes, let me come in. My organization is Junior Chamber International, and it is a civil society organization by membership. I am the Peace Possible Director for Ghana for 2017.
Wow. Bishop, the world we find ourselves in, because you are the spiritual leaders, and when there's peace, we give you the credit. When there's war, unfortunately, we don't give it to you. And I remember the genocide in Rwanda.
Yes, sir.
A Catholic mission, atrocities took place. When I read about Congo, DR Congo, people are using the name of Christianity to commit lots of atrocities. Islam, the same thing. But as a man of God, is the world a peaceful one?
Yes, it is. Because I heard from my sister that peace is not the absence of war,
The prevalence of justice.
but the prevalence of justice. And in the biblical age, you will see that there's never been peace. But I thank God this year, the theme is that youth building peace. And Judge, you bear with me, in 1995, the General Assembly, the United Nations, came out with the WPA program, Youth for Action, and they came out and adopted the resolution that it is time to engage the youth. So the General Assembly even came out with 15 field areas, and the priority one is education. So the peace we are talking of is that There might be war. There might be ethnic division and other things and religious challenges. But in the midst of it, we must give the youth the enabling environment. And it starts with one, the practice education. They have education and employment. You see, until you engage the youth, the exuberant zeal that they are having, they will channel it into other areas. And we realize that it is time for nations, the whole world, that it's not time to preach peace. It is time to practice peace. And to practice peace, there are pillars that we need to engage. Following and unfollowing, George, in Africa, we have been confronted, we focus too much on our war and other divisions and religious, and in the genocide area, you see religion and whatever, they are bound to happen. Because even in the biblical days, the whole Israel need just a youth of David, 17 years to overcome Goliath. And for years, they were just fighting who will overcome Goliath. And the Palestinians were on them, Palestinians on them, and the Pharisees on them. They don't have a way out until God used. Following and following, the UN General Assembly adopted the 15 field areas, but they did not also add that, George, we human beings are not only, we are both spiritual and physical. And let me say to you that they do not treat this thing, spell it out clearly. We thought after all the charters and everything, we will see total peace. George, but what do we see now? It's still going on. They are trying their best. They are trying their best. One thing as a man of God, I always pray for United Nations because you know what, their interventions and other things, and they go in to save lives, has helped us so much. And then we will see the worst things we are seeing. The other groups and other NGOs, they are playing their part. But at this, and in building peace, George, we will need certain things that were like Ghana. Thank God we've started giving people advantage of this education, because without education and without the Godfather, George, because do you know one thing? For instance, in our individual homes, we normally engage the services of part-time maths teachers, English teachers, science teachers, physics, whatever. But we never engage the services of a man of God, so that people come out as scientists, doctors, other things, and then they lack that spirit to make sure that we go in for peace, we foster peace and maintain it.
I'm just wondering, somebody was telling me 3 p.m. today that he just came from the United States, and he was like, look, in the U.S., where he's coming from, it takes, if you are a Muslim, it is even a little better convincing the younger ones. They are increasingly not becoming, they are not trusting the pastors because of what they are beginning to see. And I'm wondering, the way the trend is going, the people who preach peace, do they really practice it? Do they see some justice in the peace that they preach? And without the justice, the peace will be elusive.
I agree with your friend that what he said is the reality on the ground. You're very sincere. Others may not agree with me, because the youth, when we talk of the youth meant beginning. And the youth mean to me foundations. And if the foundations are destroyed, what shall the righteous do? In Psalm 11 verse 3. And so the youth are looking up to some people. When we talk of youth engaging, building peace, George, we are talking of the leaders, the elders, the nations. Do we do our part? It's unfortunately in Africa, the African youth are lacking so much. I don't know about others. And what he said is that it's easier for a Muslim to now preach and the youth accept more than the person. Because what do we see in the churches? We cannot say all on air. Just to be very sincere. Because look at the churches and other institutions promoting other things you know. And then the youth say, it is not what we want. George, people are saying that the youth are not dressing properly, the youth don't respect, the youth don't want to study. No, the youth are looking for the truth. And whatever you are saying, the youth are not marking your words, but the youth are taken into consideration. Like for instance, you have a young child in the house, and you will take something, go and buy me Guinness, go and buy me this, whatever. And then in Sunday school, you said it's not good to drink. And it's not that is drinking. So why can't we practice what we preach?
All right. Everybody, young people, do we have that conducive atmosphere to chart a peaceful world that we want? That is, if we choose to.
Even though quite a convincing definition has been given by my sister to what peace really is, I think you need to look at this through the spectrum of intra-state peace and serenity, and then interstate or international transnational peace. And Bishop and others who are theologians and clerics come to play in putting body and soul together. But when it comes to international security, we damn the consequences of morality.
No morality.
There's no morality. That is why I still harp on the point you made. It's a realist world. How on earth would a country be surreptitiously supplying arms, and this country, to rebels? And this country looms very large in matters of international negotiations, and it knows so well that it is aiding and abetting bloodshed on the quiet. So people don't have permanent allies, they have permanent interests. So to pursue your interest, you defy morality. Religion doesn't mean too much to you. So you keep your eye on the ball.
So to the extent that it favors you, there's peace.
To you, that is the definition of peace. That is why, George, I always, talk about the hypocrisy of the international system. Those who are fighting in the east of Ukraine, Donetsk, and other areas, secessionist people, these people are considered rebels. And anytime they start fighting, the EU cobbles together a program for cessation of hostilities. But why would rebels in Syria, for example, be fighting for 5 straight years or 6 straight years? And some country that is considered a very major player in terms of world peace would announce publicly that it is supporting such groups with arms and money. And again, look at other countries like Libya, where a sovereign country was invaded, even though the initial resolution that was passed by the Security Council was to impose a no-fly zone to protect the people of Benghazi, ostentatiously. That led to regime change. So the Bible and the Quran don't come to play at all when countries pursue their national and international interests. So therefore, as youth or young people, we sit back in the States and Europe, people are converting churches into auditoriums for art activities, for dancing and drumming, and for ballet and other forms of programs.
Is it not, like you say, in realism, is it not the real case as we grow? If I'm beginning to, when we were kids, you go to Sunday school and they tell you Israel, Palestine, and you think that there's a song that the day I'll go to Israel, there will be joy, I'll be excited.
Yes.
And as a kid, you thought that the Israel was some heaven somewhere, only to grow and realize it's a country where you can get up and fly there and come back. You begin to realize that, am I being deceived? My point is, what is on the ground and what we have been taught? Do we have some correlation to enable us to move forward in the course of, say, charting for peace?
I think contrary to conventional knowledge, and George, I think upholding the tenets of religion and adhering to them could solve all the problems of the world. But it boils down to interpretation. Joseph Kony of Uganda is killing people, quoting parchments of the Bible. Al-Qaeda or some other groups are also carrying out acts of perpetrating acts of criminality or violence, quoting the same scriptures. So it boils down to interpretation. And again, realistically, people in Europe and in the Western Hemisphere have realized that the more religious a society is, the more impoverished it is.
Yeah.
So the richer they become, the more they think they are independent of that divine, source of inspiration called God. So therefore, it's very easy. You meet people, young people in Europe, they tell you they are atheists, and they are proud about it, or they are proud of that. So therefore, I think there needs to be a nexus. It's lost out on the clerics. It's lost out on us, the youth. There is no trust between us and them because people preach, virtue and they practice vice. And again, what is the Vatican doing? And the Pope tries his best. Other, world leaders that have embraced, religion, try their best to preach peace. But, behind closed doors, world powers, there's arm twisting.
Again, on that question of whether we have that freedom, if a group of people want to fight a redemptive war, secessionist war, I mean, why should we prevent them? If I want to say, maybe I'm a Frafra, I want to reunite with Frafras in Burkina Faso, why should that be conflictual?
You see the world as it is, and Bishop may, explain further. When God created the world, regardless of the scripture you look at, whether the Bible or the Quran, God named it the world. Yeah. It is the white man who told the Ghanaians, you see, from Aflao to Paga to Elubo, then close to the approaches of the Gulf of Guinea, this is your country, call it Ghana. I'll travel across the border tomorrow, possibly. I've not decided yet. But I'll see the same piece of land, I'll see the same vegetations, then I'll be stopped at the borders. They will tell me, this is not your country. This is called another country. So those imaginary boundaries that have been created have made it very... If ever people in the Volta region want to secede because of self-determination, sometimes being a part of a country, even in Nigeria, the Biafras, and the Igbo people wanted to secede from the rest of them. So the international system has made it quite difficult that these borders, imaginary borders that have been, created by our former colonial masters are kept intact, and they will go to war to keep those borders intact. So therefore, secessionism can be done based upon mutual consent and agreement. And a chunk of the wars that are fought in the world today are those fought because some people think they are resource-starved. Yeah. People think a chunk of the oil is coming from our area. In the Republic of Sudan, John Garang for so long was fighting against Khartoum because he thought the dark-skinned Sudanese people were being persecuted, only for the international community to help them. And today, South Sudan is at war. So therefore, it becomes very difficult to understand, the principles of realism, and then comparing with other ideologies of the world that would engender peace and peaceful coexistence amongst people.
Suraya, let me go to your peace summit. And like he said, I'm just beginning to think alike. Sometimes you need a philosophical foundation, whether you go in realism or liberalism. But what motivated this International Peace Summit, and exactly what did you do there?
The International Peace Summit in Malaysia is the first International Peace Summit JCI has held. Like I mentioned, JCI is a youth organization spread all over the world. We have JCI Ghana, we have JCI UK, and all of that. So in Malaysia, Kuching, Sarawak specifically, young people from 103 countries, over 600 young people from 106 countries. Unfortunately, I was the only one representing Ghana, but we have more people coming from other parts of the world coming to join our hands together in search of world peace. And I mentioned earlier that we don't look at peace when there is the absence of war, but the prevalence of justice. We believe at JCI that when you wake up in the morning and you have enough food to cater for you for the day, it is peace enough. So it is against this backdrop that JCI leadership found it necessary to gather young people from as much as over 100 countries, as much as 600 young people in Malaysia, just for us to have world peace in totality. We were given series of sessions, of trainings, where you had to choose your pathway to peace. There are 3 pathways that JCI has identified. We have a peacemaker, a peace promoter, and a peace builder. It is for you to choose which one and which training to go for. I went as a peace promoter, and I was given series of trainings to ensure that I join hands with other young people so that we can create the world of peace we want to see. We believe that when we have peace enough, then the world would be enjoyable enough. Like I mentioned, when you have food, enough food to eat in your house, it is peace enough. So how do we empower young people? What kind of trainings do we want to give young people so that at least we know that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. I mentioned over there, and I'm mentioning here again, that we don't train so much in totality. In Ghana, we don't train for jobs.
Okay.
We train because we want to train. Someone is in school and they don't know why they are training as a human resource person, as a marketing person. I particularly trained as a marketer in Polytechnic, but I won't roam the streets selling a product, no matter how huge the commission is. Maybe I would have done well as a caterer, because I love to cook and just enjoy what I do. At the end of the day, it still fetches you money when there is no so much hassle. So yes, it behoves on us. It is peace enough when we look at what it is we lack as a people. Who do we get involved? Because trust me, when there is disturbance, you won't find an old person there. If there is an old person at all, the person will be supplying logistics, guns, money. It is so much, it is so common in Ghana that you find young people patrolling around radio stations, and they are so available to come in and insult elderly for peanuts, just because there are no jobs, or because they are not trained for what they want or they have to do to earn them an income. Therefore, there is so much time at hand to waste. So it behoves on all young people to identify their potential, identify your passion, and go for it.
Bishop, back at secondary school,
Yeah.
I did something called CRS, and I still remember there was this king called Jehu. I think I want to call him a rebel.
Yeah.
And some king was wounded in war. Another went to visit, and Jehu was, he had been anointed to go there. And when the wounded king sent his people to meet him, he asked, "Is there peace?" And the response was, "What peace can be there so long as there's no justice?" For he cited idolatry and other things going on. And the impression I'm getting is that if there is no justice defined as what God has destined for us to follow, there cannot be peace. Do we still have that even within the religious setting?
Even the religious and also the religious. At times, because in Psalm 24, verse 10 to 14, it said, do you want to enjoy life? Do you want to live long? Do you want to enjoy life? Then he said, abstain from speaking evil and lies. And in all your heart, pursue peace. And do you know one thing? Here we are now. As my brother just said, we are manufacturing the weapons and other things and everything. We supply to people. Then you supply them to do what with? And then when they are using them, and there's bloodshed and other things, we come in, we said, oh, now let's talk peace. That we've done taking your money already. Someone went to Saudi Arabia and signed so much billions of these of weapons and other things in the name of self-defense, but it's for a purpose and a reason. George, now here we are. How do we talk of peace? And as he said, when we talk of justice, you can come down to the ordinary man's level. Don't talk of justice. One, do you know one thing? Why no child is just dropped from the sky like coconut drops? Because who will take responsibility? And so God has ordained, as he said, for God so loved the world. So formally we don't have Togo, Nigeria, what God knows about the world. He knows about humanity. He knows, Jesus said that in Luke chapter 9, verse 56, he said, the Son of Man came not to destroy man's life, but to save man's life. And so any step that saves man's life, that is part and the goal of God. But now are we saving lives in many areas? George, to be very sincere with you, even in the church, at times we pretend certain things because the realities of the matter is that now things are going wayward and going out of hands. It will reach a point if even the church universal will not get up and call a spade, it will get to a time we the people preaching, you go and preach and nobody want to listen, especially the youth. Because you know what, the youth are now advanced. Their age is not my age. When I was in early 60s and when I'm going to school, we don't have these computers and gadgets. Now my little child can take computer and browse everywhere and do everything and search things and tell me other things I don't even know. But in our days, it's not like that. We walk to school, now they don't walk to school, can't drop them or other things. Just, we are coming to the church. Is that because you said anytime we lie, you promote Satan's kingdom?
I'm wondering, that becomes problematic. A young guy told me that, look, when he goes to church and the pastor is preaching and it doesn't make sense to him, he walks out.
Yeah. But in other way to, I'll correct this thing. In religion and faith, it's not about the pastor talking sense or not. Because in Acts chapter 4, verse 13, Peter and John has no classmate. They have no classmate. They are ordinary fishermen, ordinary men, no classmates. I bet the AF gay, they don't know. But do you know one thing? They were able to hold on to it because at the end, do you know what? Whatever education, whatever we are mass worth on this earth, it belongs to the earth. We leave it. Whoever has been buried with your PhD
matters of faith. But I remember personally, my sister, very religious, one day carried me to a field. They were praying. My third time, the young guy, I don't know whether he's a pastor, he was the leader, was telling a lady that she should go and bring some ABC to kill somebody who was the cause of her problem. And I told my sister that I can't be here.
Do you know one thing? In order to never say my able colleagues will take over. Listen, any man of God that was said, bring this and that and will kill that person, is not man of God. The difference is sincere with you. Because the disciples screamed that let's call for thunder and kill these people who do not want to accept you. And Jesus, he said, as Elijah did. And Jesus rebuked them in Luke chapter 9, 53 to 56. And Jesus rebuked them. He said, do you know the manner of spirit inside you? He said, the Son of Man. So let me tell you one thing, is that anybody or everybody listening to me, don't sit under anybody who said, go and kill this person, go and do that, go and do that. Already even anger is killing a lot.
People are killing in the
name of religion. And then above all too, the youth are just vulnerable because they need the help, they need somebody to support them. And so that killing, I don't support. Call for fire, I don't support. Elijah killed innocent people because they sent the 50 messengers. Go and call Elijah. They are only messengers. He did not go and kill the king who wanted to kill him. He killed the innocent people. So Jesus said, I cannot repeat such mistake.
Everybody.
George?
I was going through Ali Mazrui's work, The Root of African Conflicts. Some of the things, if you see black root, white fruit, maybe the white man coming to cause us these artificial boundaries, and because of that we are fighting. I'm talking of country wars. Is it not time that we saw it as something of the past? Shouldn't we outgrow that at this stage?
George, I think currently Africa's conflicts are more accentuated in terms of, civil strifes, like within the same country. Apart from the Hutu Tutsi menace of East Africa that's traversed borders and brought in other external actors, a good number of the conflicts we have are only intra.
I'm wondering whether Eritrea and Ethiopia.
Eritrea and Ethiopia are now okay. Yeah, exactly. So you can talk of DRC, you can talk of Northern Mali, Kidal, Timbuktu, and Gao. These are Tuaregs within the Malian enclave that are fighting. So to a large extent, Ali Mazrui is, often copiously quoted because of the body of work he did in terms of scholarship on the continent. But I think a chunk of our problems would take various stakeholders within countries. And that is where, quote unquote, men of God or women of God come to play. And instead of encouraging the military-industrial complex, Halliburton and others should be shut down. The world needs, farming tools. The world needs harvesters. The world needs pens for people to go to schools, and not RPGs and AK-47 rifles.
And that's a difficulty. For instance, we know the United States has got weapons of mass destruction.
It does.
Intercontinental ballistic missiles. And when a small country like, say, North Korea wants to do something, which you know that it cannot match you, you want to shut him down.
Yeah, it fits into the narrative that Bishop talked about. As youth, we look up to much more influential people, the older generation.
Yeah.
And in comparing the United States to other countries, it's like a big brother. So now you say Kim Jong-un is defying international norms by testing intercontinental ballistic missiles. And you have loads of them. You say Iran should not progress with its nuclear program so that it develops nuclear warheads. And you have an arsenal of atomic bombs. So nobody is leading by example. So whatever opportunity every country has, it exploits its youth, it exploits what meager resources it has, because you can't trust the international system itself. The country that should provide you succor and solace in times of difficulty does not have a permanent ally. It has permanent interests. So what do? You arm yourself to deter against any foreign invasion.
Will a unipolar world be enough to guarantee peace?
At some point, the United States would have to give way. Certainly, if you look at the history of the world, the Greek did not remain powerful forever.
No.
The Romans did not remain powerful forever. Even the Arabs, at some point, the Arabs conquered a good part of the world, including
Yes.
Europe.
Yes.
And then the Ottomans came in. Today, when Turkish people are saying they are going cap in hand to beg impoverished European countries to open their doors to them to join the Eurozone, I get surprised. Because in the midst of this economic turmoil, the Turkish economy has thrived.
Yeah.
So therefore, no situation is permanent. And to pluck a leaf from Bishop, in the Quran, what we have is that وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامِ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. These are the days, these are the eras, these are the epochs. We switch between and among nations. It's the time of the United States. Times past, it wasn't the world superpower. But I must say, we have expressed and continue to express a lot of disappointment in the way the U.S. has carried itself about and conducted itself as a world superpower. When the Berlin Wall came down, we knew that the Soviet Union, because the impression was that communism was not good for the world. But America's, democracy and democratization efforts around the world have actually caused wars rather than, peace. So therefore, nobody is leading by example. That is why young, impressionable people in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in Libya, can easily be convinced to raise up arms against fellow humans. And again, there is an animal in everybody.
Yeah.
The animalistic instinct in you should be suppressed by religion. But unfortunately, on that front too, we are not doing too well. So there is no conscience, there is nobody who tells you what is moral, and therefore, when given the opportunity, people go haywire, and they kill as many other people as possible.
Soraya, after meeting our partners across the globe, do you get the impression that the African youth is full of conflict ideas, not peaceful compared to the whites?
No, there wasn't that disparity. I think that for all of us that represented our respective countries, it was because we sought the same goal, peace. So it is not for us as representatives at the summits.
Okay.
Maybe our interaction back home will bring that result. We all are charged to get back home and get to work and achieve that world peace we all seek that took us to the summit. So it is after these interactions that we get to know what you have asked, whether the whites or the Africans would have had that conflict or not. But for all of us, the beautiful people, great personalities from across the globe, some of them were not even youth, but they were there. They weren't sponsored to even attend the summit, but these were people that saw that they could channel their energy to this, just in search of...
like he said, peace is conditional. You are back home in Ghana. You see yourself, for instance, as a Wale lady. Then you meet somebody who is an Achim lady. You see the division, they and us. to what extent can we exist in this context, they and us, and still ensure peace?
That is if you identify everyone as one. Robert mentioned earlier that God created the world and called it the world. He didn't call this demarcation Ghana
No.
and call another
No.
Europe. It is our mindset. It is what we have allowed ourselves to think that makes us. So at the end of the day, identify the other person as you and believe that a threat to peace anywhere is a threat to peace everywhere. Have that at the back of your mind and treat each other person. Let the brotherhood of man transcend the sovereignty of nations. Then we can achieve the peace we seek for the world.
Is the human mind that's renewed, emancipated? You live in a family, a brother and a sister, from one mother, one father. One is a Muslim, one is a Christian. Then you see, as for them, they are descendants of Adam, and then
A descendant of Ishmael,
Ishmael
and a
and
descendant
then
of Isaac.
but you are coming from the same mother, the same father. In the midst of that, you chart different courses. This one says, I am a Christian, I am a Muslim.
So
How do we enjoy?
at the end of the day, it is what you allow yourself to think.
Period.
What you think you become.
Period.
Do you get the feeling practically that the youth, say in Ghana and Africa, are gradually getting that consciousness of being a human being created by one God?
I think owing to election 2016, yes. I realized that a lot of young people noticed that it wasn't so much of good, no matter how much money or peanuts you are offered by a politician or a rich man, it wasn't worth your life in any sense. I worked as an election observer. I worked as a person ensuring peace before, during, and after the election. And I'll tell you that I had young people committing to peace one way or the other. You had them pledging, people who ordinarily would have said, oh, we are not going to agree and we're not going to this. I crossed towns trying to interact with young people and the old alike. And believe you me, I'll always say, what you think you become, it's up to you to create what change you want to see. You mentioned something about people thinking these people are descendants of Adam or Ishmael or whatever. We cannot put people in a general context. Identify your brother as you and you as your brother. That is one. The other thing is a religious leader in Tamale shared this with me and my team actually when we embarked on a peace project. And he mentioned that he interacted with someone in the security service who is his friend and a Christian. He doesn't come from Tamale either, so he's probably a Southerner. And that's when he went into his office, he just said, Malam, your people are not good. Unkrof, nipa nye, no, unkrof nye, as in people around that area are bad people. And he corrected him by saying that, say that nipa nye, as in the person who would have done whatever it is for you to get to this conclusion is human, like any other person. I have a lot of people having to talk to me that I don't look like a Dagomba, I don't look like a Northerner. And even in Malaysia, someone saw me pray and was like, are you a Muslim? I was like, what were you expecting? What do I look like, a Buddhist? That's it. It's not for us to get into the general context. At the end of the day, the man's interaction with him was that someone swindled him apparently, and he concluded that this was a behavior for Northerners or Dagombes or Muslims perhaps. And he said that he asked him whether his own people do not behave the same way. And he was startled. He couldn't answer because every other person, like Irbad mentioned, has an animal in him. But sometimes you just have to suppress it sometimes. Like I have always said that all of us have skeletons in our cupboard. We have that side, you know, That side I want you to know. And that side you and I don't want to come out. So it behoves on us all to just let that side that God and us and the world wants to see, let us portray that one.
Bishop,
George,
the religious, I used to admire the late Moabi Wahab Adam.
yeah,
He could visit the churches, and whilst a national service boy in Wa, anytime he visited, there was, I didn't see that kind of
even a national chief imam.
And I noticed
I love him so much.
One of the religious leaders then in Wa, the daughter was a Christian, and the man was a leader in the mosque.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, moving forward, are we getting to a stage where we can have that integration?
Ghana, we are blessed. We are getting there. We are very young people. As he said, you see, because of this, God gave Moses the law, the Mosaic law. They call it the Torah. And then you have 3 blocks that the law, the civil law, and then the ceremonial law. Now, these things, as he said, the church has neglected it. We are not putting this to the letter. And then before when you come to the other phases too, we have to come. Religion, all religion is talking of peace, but we practice it. And then, as he said, that there are certain group, a set of group take access to people like Boko Haram and others that they are claiming they are not Islam, because Islam will not teach anybody to go and destroy life. There's nowhere in the Quran, never, and there's nowhere in the Bible, other things. But others have taken certain fragments of that law, and then they are doing whatever they will do. But trust me that the word UN is doing their part. But you know one thing, God is still in control. Because one thing I should challenge every youth is that who do you want to become? Who do you want to be called? Who do you want to be? These 3 questions, and then begin to narrow. And whatever that would destroy someone's life, just abstain from those things. And know that even when we talk of peace, you are first the agent of peace and the agent of change. And this word now, as we are going, Jesus said rightly, and I quote him, is my Lord. He said, this adulterous, evil and adulterous generation. You see, because why is it that the cause of certain things are coming from somewhere? And trust me or not, that Africa will one day come up. Africa will take the edge. It does not matter at the look of our challenge, because the challenges mean that there's room for growth.
Well, Africa will one day come out, and that brings me to the thinking that the stereotypical nature of human beings. Going through Ali Mazrou's work, when you take Africa's share of conflicts around independence and immediately after, some 80 million people at a time dying, and you go through the literature and like Africa is chaotic, bloody conflict, and they go to Ken Lopia DR Congo at the time, and they paint the picture as if the black man is like a demon. But when you compare that to Europe's First and Second World Wars, the blood, the deaths and the atrocities there, far, far, far more than what happened here. I'm wondering whether we will get to a stage where the world will be in a position to treat all of us as equal and not see some people as more demonic, more bloodthirsty people than others.
I think when you go through the parchments of history, you will come to the conclusion that if the African race or the black race is not the most peaceful, and it's one of the most peaceful races, who brought war to us? Who brought us the guns and the cudgels? There were some other people. And look at don't even go to the First and Second World Wars. They were global.
Yeah.
Look at the French war against fellow European countries. Within the United Kingdom, then called Great Britain, anytime there was an insurrection, look at the brutality with which it was quashed. Don't you see the devices of decapitation in the history of Europe? Some other people introduced us to war. The Asafo, who would protect the palace, were not, exposed to mass murder.
No.
There was somebody who brought a gun and said, when you clock it, you can shoot a person and kill him, and shoot another time. Then they bring you an AK and say you can shoot 50 rounds or 100 rounds in a minute. And every round can kill one person. Every bullet can kill one person. So there is a historical antecedent.
But do we know that as Africans? You hear young people say, you hear fighting in Somalia and say, oh, as for Africans, as for we blacks, we will continue to kill ourselves.
We need to tell the African story.
No, you know, there is a friend I have who copiously quotes the adage, until the lion gets to know how to tell his story, the tale of hunting is always going to glorify the hunter.
Yeah.
You don't write as an African or as Africans. You don't document. You don't author books. When you even teach in institutions of knowledge, you don't quote your own scholars.
No.
Throughout your studies, for your masters or whatever, how many times has an African been quoted? It's very rare. And again, sometimes even the referencing we do for our dissertations, they say, okay, quote, make references, quote somebody. And it could be that the white man you are quoting, maybe did not even author more than one book. He just gave one presentation somewhere. But that has been forced down our throats. So it's about white folks being quoted. Is it that an African, Mansa Musa didn't have any economic idea to share with the world? Mansa Musa, with the expanse of territory he controlled and the dominion he had, he didn't have anything to tell us about politics. So we should begin to tell the African story, the African way.
Soraya, is the African ready to listen to the African story? And I'm just bringing us to home. When I see people watch movies from India, Europe, at the expense of what we do in Kumasi, the Hollywood, I ask people why, and they say, oh, the Hollywood one is not...
The Kumawood, yeah.
Yes, and I ask, Kumawood, but is that not a reflection of who we are? Why do you want to go and watch somebody's culture which is not yours? But increasingly, do you see the African youth embracing what is African?
Again, it is left to us to do self-introspection. It is left with the African or the Ghanaian to pat yourself anywhere in the on the body. Say to yourself that yes, we can. It is up to you to want it. Then you would be able to get it. Look at yourself just within. Let's look at social media, for instance, when there is a post on Facebook. People who know you personally do not get to like or comment on your activities, especially when it is something good. You don't get that. You get that a lot. I am not saying this is what happens every time, but a lot of the time you get to interact more with people outside your scope totally. So it is left for us to do self-introspection and say to ourselves that yes, we can. It begins with us all. Everybody, why are you not wearing the kente or the smock? All of you here.
Yes. And I asked an African professor on this show, and he was like, yes, we have kente used to make suit.
No, you know what? To answer Soraya, if I put on the kente and go for a corporate meeting, because of the stereotype, they won't take me serious.
So it is left for us as young people.
Exactly. And again,
it begins with us.
Even when you have a crusade, a church has a crusade, and they run commercials, and they mention only local pastors. Well, this is going to be a grand crusade at the International Conference Center, or Accra Sports Stadium, or Hene Sport. And the pastors that are lined up are Bishop Asigri, Bishop this, local names. They'll say there is no vibe in it. Some white guy who in his country, maybe he's nobody.
He's coming from US.
Look, an opinion leader in this country wanted to launch a book project. He wanted me to be the face of the book.
Yeah.
I said, okay, fine. I'm into erudition, anything that has to do with education. I would want to give you a tap on the back. He said, everybody, let's, sit. We had a string of meetings. A very prominent person, I can't mention his name.
Yeah.
Then on the day of launch, we were looking at the program lineup. He said, okay, well, he has gone to the Hungarian embassy. Look, listen to the name of the country, Hungary. And it depicts the difficulty in that country as well. He said, everybody, we need to get the white people to stand with you to take pictures. Then people will take us serious. You don't know the country to go to but Hungary? So therefore, it's a stereotype. If I should not put on a suit and a flying tie and I go for a meeting, people will even pass you by. They'll say, ah, is it the person we are meeting? So I believe my sister could also put on our own African garbs. I can also put on same, but there is a stereotype. Hillary Clinton dressed this way when she was Secretary of State. So therefore, how we consume information has a bearing on our attitudes. The Kumawood people over the week, in the course of the week, demonstrated, and they petitioned Dasantehene. And the argument is that we brought Asian people, Indian people and Mexican people, and they speak in our local dialect. And now when there are weddings, if you don't take care, your wife-to-be will tell you that she wants to look like one of the characters in Kukumbaga.
Yes.
So the media we consume.
Very unfortunate. Man of God, our time is fast spent, but should we accept that we are colonized to the extent that we cannot go back to our roots and accept the impoverished state that we've been made to be now?
You know,
by listening to the white man every day.
It takes Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, and others about 2 decades to reprogram their people, raise leaders, further integrate the youth, and then build up Singapore where it is now. I think we must start somewhere. Other than that, the colonial and new colonialism has been imposed on us so much that, George, now anything in Africa is imitation. Anything of our own, we don't have the spirit to accept it totally. And anything foreign is genuine, is original, and does not even matter the cost. We are ready for it. Because that's what we have been indoctrinated with. We need, do you know what the Bible says? Godliness with content is a great gain. For blood nothing, and we shall take nothing out. The reason why we need the youth, the church, the whole world, the continent, we need the youth is that whether we like it or not, they have to take over.
Well, in Africa, at least our president, Nana Akufo-Addo, and the Nigerian president, General Buhari, they demonstrate that they put on the African attire a lot.
Normally, Sundays I put on African attire a lot. Today I went to some program that's why. Do you know one thing? I will tell you that you, though at times you'll be addressed by your dressing. And Africa, even our kente, we weave it to man. It's so heavy that if you coat with it and you wear it, it's like a weight, like you are going to war. Other things. We must see that in textile industry, because I believe, do you know, a vehicle model Isuzu, they started as a cotton and fabric industry, and they came out with cars. We need to improve. We need to tailor our education to suit us. We need to see ourselves that there is something in us. We can come up with something. We are not inferior and we are capable. Yes, we can. My sister used the word. Yes, we can.
Well, let me take your final comment. Yes, we can. And I remember Madam Gladys back at JSS 3. She was like, put on suits. And I was like, this thing is...
No,
you think it's easy to be catching?
No, George. Mind you, it's very un-African for you to strangulate yourself. Nobody feels comfortable putting on this. But when there is an opening for a job opportunity, and you are lucky to even be shortlisted for an interview, put on kente and go and tell me if you will get the job.
Even when the African is in charge.
Exactly. So it's a serious stereotype.
How can there be peace? Your last comment. Bishop, let me start with you.
George, we thank God. Youth should listen to me. There is hope. We are very young. Our democracy is very young. Africa, we've been through many manipulations. Because look at, it's basically like Belgium and Congo. You will see what they say. I will have a resource, but I think we are starting somewhere and we are going somewhere. We should be proud of Africans. We should take charge of certain things, confront issues, and let's be realistic. And we are praying for our leaders. So also have this in mind that the youth need our support. Now, after formally after national service, you quickly at least about some percentage will be employed. Now after national service, the youth doesn't even have any hope. After national service, go and sit home. Whatever you do, nobody care and other things. We need the support of the leaders. The youth need our leader. They need our support. They need our leadership. We should stand for the youth.
Suraya, your last comment.
Okay, I want to tell all young people out there that it behoves on us to create the change we want to see. Be the change you want to see. Start in any little way you can. Be a volunteer. Be your own boss. Be anything you believe in yourself that you can be, and follow your passion. And I leave you with the words I carried from Malaysia, that a threat to peace anywhere is a threat to peace everywhere.
Well, and your comments remind me of the Minister of Culture, Creative Art.
Creative art.
You said, eat Ghana, talk Ghana, live Ghana, wear Ghana, everything Ghana. Your last comment.
Okay, thank you. It's going to be a two-pronged, closing remark in a nutshell. Just a sequel to what we did last weekend. Yeah. That on Monday, God willing, my sister just quoted, a threat to peace anywhere is a threat to peace everywhere. And Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. There is vile injustice taking place in Myanmar. And therefore, we are all gathering on Monday. We've done all the paperwork with the police. We are gathering at Obra Sport at Circle on Monday. And we are going to do a peaceful procession with placards that talk about at 8 a.m., from 8 a.m., placards that talk about the young people, youth, pregnant women, children and the aged that are being maimed in Myanmar. And we make 3 demands. 1, Aung San Suu Kyi, the president of Myanmar, does not deserve to continue to be a Nobel Prize laureate. She should be stripped of that accolade. Number 2, we call on the Canadian government to revoke the honorary citizenship it has conferred on her. And number 3, the Israeli government should stop selling arms to the Burmese army, because it is using those arms to persecute an ethnic minority. So those are our demands. All Ghanaians are invited. Obra Sport, 8 a.m. on Monday.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time this evening with us. Ensuring international peace, the role of the youth, the African youth. That has been the topic for discussion this evening. I've been here with Bishop Ishmael Abuajieji. He is the General Superintendent, Victorious Life Chapel International, headquartered at Bawe, here in the Greater Accra region. Next to Bishop is Suraya Idrisu Kwabia, and she is the Country Director, Youth Chambers International.
Peace is Possible Director, JCI Ghana.
And then Iribad Ibrahim, he is the CEO of Iribad Security Consult, and he's been a peace ambassador when it comes to election. Thank you. I'm George Asikri. I was produced by Celestine Avi. And thank you very much to all the technical team that made this program a success. God willing, same time next week, we will be here. Until then, continue to enjoy the rest of our programs.